Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Monday After Preachers podcast, where our focus is on holistic health in an evolving climate. And we have, as I say every week, we have another great show in store for you. Listen, if you haven't checked out our latest episodes or last episodes, I ask that you go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podvine, or YouTube to hear some amazing content from some amazing guests. This is our seventh show, and we're excited about the content that we've produced thus far. And I promise if you go over and listen to it, it will be a blessing to you. All right, we have another amazing guest who I met about 4 years ago. He is a phenomenal guy, a great gift to the body of Christ. He is our guest today is Dr. Darrell Griffin from Chi-Town, from Chicago. Dr. Darrell Griffin is a thought leader. He's a senior pastor. He's a spiritual director, certified ministry coach, and a certified Enneagram trainer. He travels across the country teaching congregations and nonprofits the building a better team system. Here's a little background on him. Since 2000, Dr. Griffin has served as senior pastor of the Oakdale Covenant Church in Chicago, Illinois. He graduated from the Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Did some work, his divinity work at Harvard School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and at North Park Theological Seminary. That's where you got your doctorate from, Dr. Griff?
Yes.
Okay. And he also authored two amazing books. One that I read all the way through my first year as I transitioned into leadership at the church I am now, Navigating Pastoral Leadership, the Transition Zone, Arriving in the Middle of the Movie. I tell you, Dr. Griff, that book helped my life tremendously. And he just released another book, Building a Better You, which will be the focus of our conversation, where the focus is using the Enneagram to find purpose, healing, and success in relationships. Welcome to the stove, Dr. Griffin. How you doing, sir?
Man, I'm great, Pastor. How are you?
I'm doing well in this sunny weather. How's the weather in Chicago?
It's a little warm.
Really?
Yeah. I tell you, global warming is real, because by now in Chicago, it would be very, very cold. In fact, the dogs would be saying it's cool. so we're in global warming area.
So now y'all see that how it feels to be in Miami. We never, our cold weather is like 75, and we be having boots and coats. All right, thanks for being on the show. So before we get into the conversation, I ask all my guests this particular question, and the question is, what are some of the intentional practices that you employ to ensure your holistic health?
What are some of the practices that I use?
Yeah, to ensure your holistic health.
So I'm also a spiritual director. So part of what I have done to ensure my personal, holistic growth is, one, I make sure that I have a life rule. Mm-hmm. A life rule sort of kind of guides me as to some of my daily practices, spiritually, mentally, and physically. I make sure that I, take retreats, take my vacations, and also really make sure that there are moments in the day and moments in the week where I can be alone to process my feelings and thoughts.
Right.
The old saying is what keeps the fire burning is space between the logs. And so making sure that we have space between it, because the church is like Las Vegas. It's, 7 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you could just get consumed in it. And so you do need to have those kind of holistic practices to help keep balance in your life.
Wow. So can you explain a life rule? What is a life rule?
So a life rule is it's a similar to like a plan for your life. So a life rule, the Benedictine, sort of some of the orders, the priestly orders have a life rule.
Right.
And so the Benedictines had a life rule. And it really is saying, here's what you're going to do for your physical health during the day. So I get up and I go to the gym every morning at 5 a.m. Mm-hmm. I work out. Then I do my devotion. And then I take care of my other aspects of my health and mental health during the day.
Right.
And so you write out a plan. And the life rule is to write out a plan to make sure that you keep those daily rhythms, those monthly rhythms, and those quarterly rhythms.
Wow, wow. And so that definitely sounds like something that'll ensure holistic health.
Yeah, and we can do another whole session on spiritual direction and sort of those kind of spiritual practices, like, for example, a silent retreat, all of those kinds of things.
Okay, that sounds good, Dr. Griff. Dr. Griff, so let's get into the conversation. I want to, of course, center this conversation around your book, which is phenomenal, the Enneagram, which I was introduced to. I had never heard about it until 2019. It is a life changer, especially when it comes to exposing us as people and personality types. And so I want to kind of center our conversation around the topic of building a better you and its contribution to holistic health. Focusing, of course, on the Enneagram, which you are a guru. And I believe many of our listeners, especially in the clergy community, can benefit from the Enneagram. So I want to start off with this particular question. Can you tell us what the Enneagram is and the benefits that it offers?
So yes, so the Enneagram is an ancient system that in many ways the early church fathers kind of used it, kind of like the spiritual gifts. Ennea means 9 and gram means point. So there are 9 personality points. So for example, I like Dr. Jerome Wagner's way of looking at the Enneagram, where he says 1 is a good person, which is the oldest child, the one that takes leadership in the family. 2 is a loving person who puts other people's needs before their needs. They've never met a stranger. 3s are efficient people where they operate in systems. 4s are original people. They're your creatives, your artists. 5s are your wise people, your introverts, your intellectuals. 6s are your loyal people, your law and order, military, black or white, cautious people. 7s are your joyful people. They're your big picture, risk takers, adventurers, love to travel. And then 8s are powerful people, your captains of industry, your activists, strong personalities, passionate about justice, passionate about their issues, and passionate about their assignments. And then 9s are peaceful people, where they are ecumenical reconcilers. So now you notice that I said good, loving, efficient, original, wise, loyal, joyful, powerful, and peaceful. So those are the sort of 9 characteristics. Those are actually the characteristics of God.
Wow. Okay.
When you think about it, God is all of those things. God is all of those things. And what I love about the Enneagram is you think about I've taken my children and my family up to the Hershey factory. You've ever heard of the little Hershey Kisses? I love those Hershey Kisses because when you go up to the factory, they give you samples of them. But when you're there, you'll see huge vats of chocolate. And you can't ingest all of those chocolates. You can't ingest all of that because it will kill you. But you get the full essence of what's in the vat of chocolate in the form of the Hershey Kiss. So we can't consume all of God, but we get the full essence of God in the form of Christ. Christ is our Hershey Kiss. So that means all of us have a slice of God in us.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So what are the benefits of the Enneagram as you're exposing the different types?
So the goal of the Enneagram is the more you know about yourself, the better you can be in relationship with other people. And so the Enneagram becomes that tool to help us understand ourselves. And part of the problem that we have in our church, I don't know if this podcast is it for church leaders or is it?
Yeah, church.
Okay, for church leaders. Okay, so part of this problem that we have is how do we manage all of these difficult personalities in our church? Our staff to our leaders, how do we handle just difficult people.
Right.
And then the question becomes, why is some people so great to work with? And why are some people so difficult to work with?
Right.
And how do we sort of have tools to be able to help us to do that? And the Enneagram becomes the tool, because guess what? It is a painful experience as a leader and as a pastor, as a leader, when you have a lot of staph infections.
Right.
Staph infections don't just occur in the hospital.
Hmm.
And what happens when you have difficult staff people, toxic staff? How do you manage that? How do you manage boards, deacon board, trustee board, where these people are difficult? The Enneagram gives you a tool to be able to help you with that. When I got introduced to the Enneagram in probably 2006 and 2007,
Right.
I was blown away when I took the test, because you take a test and they assess you,
Right.
similar to Myers-Briggs and leading from your strength and all. So I took the test and it nailed me.
Right.
And I asked the guy, I said, how did you do this?
Right.
And he said, oh, it's, the Enneagram. And I'm like, okay, I need to know how to do this,
Right.
because you nailed me and I need to know how to. So I went and learned the Enneagram. I'll spend a week with Dr. Jerome Wagner, learn the Enneagram, and then I put some Afro sheen on it so that it would fit our context.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has caused conflict to drop by 90% in our church.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just like you, I was floored. Like when I took the Enneagram test, the accuracy and the description. And then what further blew me away was when I had my wife take the test. You had never met her, Dr. Griff. But based on her numbers, you read her like a book. And so it was just the accuracy is amazing. I don't know if I can ask you this, or you have to answer. How does it produce such accuracy? Like, just over time, they've studied personalities? Is it like, because the accuracy is just amazing?
Well, I'm sure they have an algorithm to do that.
Right.
But it's similar to all the other assessment tests. You provide the information to answer the questions, and then they put it in the algorithm to help. So I just think that I don't think that it's accurate in this degree, but I don't know fully how it works.
Okay.
As far as the sort of the algorithms that they use.
Mm-hmm.
But I use 9types.com. I've used the Spectrum from Dr. Wagner.
Right.
9types is free. Dr. Wagner's test costs maybe $15.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the longer the test, the more they find out about you, right, and you can still get more accuracy in it.
Yeah.
And so, but I like the fact that my staff, my leaders can take a quick test, and you can get an idea of how they're going to lead. Now, people have asked me, what's the difference between the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram? Mm-hmm. And I say to them, Myers-Briggs tells you where you are. Right. The Enneagram tells you where you are and where you need to be. Right. Wow. So that takes it a step further in that. But Pastor, do you remember your numbers at all?
I think I was a 9. I think I was a 9. I got to take it again, but I think I was a 9.
Yeah. I wish we would have thought about it, because we could have taken it, and right, I could have assessed you right on the podcast. So next, let's look to do another session, okay, where I can sort of go over your numbers.
Right. And that. Wow. So you said even before you introduced the Enneagram to us back in 2019 at Prime, you just made the statement, the better we understand ourselves, the better we can be in relationship with others. Now, how does that fit? So the Enneagram exposes who we are, and then we take who we are into relationships so we can function. Like how does that work?
Yeah, so one of the hardest things to ever do, mm-hmm, is to understand ourselves. Okay. That's one of the hardest things we will ever do in our lives, is to understand ourselves. Now, I come from a big extended family. Mm-hmm. My family, let me tell you, I know them. Right. I know my family. Mm-hmm. And the reason I know my family very well is because my family, they're not African Americans. Right. They're not. My family is gun-toting, liquor-drinking ninjas. Okay.
Right, right.
So I know what's going to happen at every single function.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem is I don't always know what I contribute to the drama in my family.
Right, right.
And so a lot of times we don't understand what we contribute to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, my pastor, Dr. Butts, who just passed away, when I finished seminary, I worked at Abyssinian under Dr. Butts, and Dr. Proctor was the pastor emeritus then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm working there, and the first day on the job, we go see a lady who had a mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there. I'm a young preacher, and we're sitting there talking to her. And what blew me away was that she seemed so normal. Seemed like nothing was wrong with her.
Right.
So when we left out, I said, Pastor, what's wrong with her? She seems so normal. He said, oh, Dee, she's had a mental breakdown and all that. And the Black church needs to talk about mental illness and everything. He went on and on. So we get back to Harlem, and I said, well, how do you know when you have lost it? And he said, Dee, you're the last to know.
Wow.
Everyone else knows you've lost it.
Right.
You're the last to know. And so a lot of times we are the last to know that we are the problem.
Right.
Everybody else knows we're the problem. We're the last to know.
Right.
So the Enneagram gives us tools to help us to sort of understand that. And one of the tools that I think helps us in that, getting to ourselves, getting to know ourselves, is not only the Enneagram, but also I add a component to that, is having a personal mission statement.
Right.
Where people need to have a personal mission statement. Your ministry has a personal mission statement. My ministry has a personal mission statement. Most organizations have a personal mission statement. Mm-hmm. Well, if it's important that the organization has a personal mission statement,
right,
why wouldn't it be important for us as individuals to have a personal mission statement?
Right.
And the reason why you need to have that personal mission statement is to understand your purpose. Because I argue that the people who give you the most problems in your life mm-hmm. are people who do not know their purpose.
Right, right.
They don't.
Right, right.
And in fact, you can reframe it to say the people who give you the most problems in your life are mm-hmm. people who don't know their business, so therefore they're in your business.
Right, 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 right.
And so, and then the other thing to this is purpose is offensive. Mm-hmm. So once I know what I'm called to do, I can no longer be co-opted by other people.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So that's what the personal mission statement does. It gives our life direction, purpose, and it helps us to make sure we're functioning in the proper lane. I've heard it, but to this extent, I've never heard it put like that. So can we shift gears in your book, you talked about unresolved emotional issues, or talked about the emotional. How does the Enneagram work in regards to us having emotional issues? How does it address it? Like, what's the connection?
Well, here's the problem mm-hmm. is that a lot of our unresolved issues have been shaped. Our personalities have been shaped by some of our unresolved issues.
Right.
And our personality, our families, all these dynamics have shaped some of our unresolved and emotional issues.
Right.
So, for example, if you are a 1 and you grew up in a house where everything needed to be perfect, right. So as a 1, you have this emotional issue, this baggage of everything needs to be perfect.
Right.
So every relationship has to be perfect. Every event has to be perfect. And some people don't operate that way. They just want it done. Yeah. And yet you're stuck on perfection. And the perfection is what's destroying your relationship. You think that, people can't rise to your occasion to make sure the things because you have standards. Yeah. And the real issue is you have a lot of unresolved issues that you need to begin to address. Mm-hmm. Just the last thing, if you're a 2, you've learned to put other people's needs before your needs. Mm-hmm. So you've been the helper of the family. You've been the martyr of the family. You've been all of that. And so you have this need to be needed.
Right.
And as a result, you've got a lot of unresolved issues where you have become a needy person, or you have become an enabler, where you've enabled people to do things. Are you seeing the pattern here?
Absolutely.
You go to threes, where everything needs to be in a system.
Right.
The fours, which are original creative people, everything doesn't have to be different and unique and all that.
Right.
So since if you grew up in a family where there was this uniform expectation, you see a lot of the fours show up where they have to be different and unique. So everybody wearing their hair one way, you got to wear it a different way.
Right.
You got to dress differently. Everybody else wants to go on vacation and you don't want to go to that spot. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's because remember, our lives and our experiences have shaped our personality.
Wow. And that's good. And you made another a statement in your book. I don't know how it parallel with this. You talked about stop devaluing yourself. Can you speak more to that?
What?
Stop devaluing yourself.
Yeah. So what you have is a lot of people who, when you look at all of these all the numbers have a positive part to it and have a negative part to it.
Right.
What we begin to do is we devalue ourselves by focusing in on our imperfections and our issues versus on positive aspects. So, for example, the one who is very, very critical of themselves and critical of other people, they start devaluing themselves. Oh my God, I can't believe that I did that. I'm such an idiot. Why are you devaluing yourself? Right. It's okay. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. So we do that different type, all the types can, when you get in an unhealthy place, you can begin to start devaluing yourself and feeling like you're inadequate to begin to be who you really are, who you really need to be.
Right.
Is that making sense?
Yes, making sense. And of course, to get more into the Enneagram, the wings, if you will, like of the types, because as it points out who you are, then where do you gain your strength from if I expose this part of my character? So can you talk about the wings that's connected to the types?
Yeah. So for example, here's where I depart from everybody in teaching the Enneagram.
Okay.
So if you're a 9, you probably have a 1 or an 8 wing. So the wings are on either side of your number. And so, for example, if you are a 9, which means you're an easygoing person, if you have an 8 wing, that means that there are parts of you that can be easygoing, and you might get to the strength part of the 8, where all of a sudden you can have a strong personality at certain points in the process.
Right.
If you're a 9 with a 1 wing, you can be a perfectionist about things.
Right.
So you follow what I'm saying? So yes. I decided that. But here's the thing that I argue with. I don't look at just your number.
Right.
Most people look at just one number. I argue that we should be looking at all of your numbers.
Okay.
And the reason we need to look at all of your numbers is because when you go to the doctor doesn't focus on just one number.
Right.
The doctor focuses on all of your numbers.
Right.
Because all of your numbers speak about your overall health. If that makes sense. Right. So that's why I teach it differently. I make you bring in all your numbers. Don't come in and say, oh, I'm just a 9.
Right.
And all that. No, because guess what? Those other numbers are speaking volumes about your overall personality.
Right.
That can explain why you're doing what you're doing even better than the wings can.
Right. So even if the other numbers are low, there's still a contribution to who we are as individuals.
Right, because for example, if you took the test and your 9 was really high,
right.
Your 2 was really high, and say your 1 was low, your 8 was low, that's telling me that you're so busy putting other people's needs before your needs that you're not standing up for yourself.
Right, right, right.
That's already telling me that.
Yeah.
So I would say tone down the need to be needed, tone down the, letting people walk all over you,
Mm-hmm.
and start to speak up for yourself and speak up for, your cause.
Right. This Enneagram is so amazing because a lot of us, of course, and I know therapy is definitely a part of our conversation these days. Um, but I think coupled with that as well as our spirituality is learning who we are and discovering who we are. Now, what are some of the challenges you think? I got a couple more questions and
Mhm.
we'll transition. What do you think some of the challenges are with self-discovery? Like, why do we struggle with that part? Is it because we don't know how, or we don't want to do it, or like what is your wisdom on that?
Well, I think it's two things. One, in practical purposes, many of us don't know how to really do an introspective piece and looking at ourselves. We don't know how to look within.
Right.
I don't think we know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is I think that for those of us we don't always like what we see.
Right. Right.
So that's part of the reasons that it's a really tough assignment to be able to start looking at yourself. But again, you can't be in relationship with other people if you're not understanding yourself. So that's why it's important. That's why I call having a personal mission statement, I call it a flight plan.
Right.
So when you leave Miami to come, I'm coming down for Trufon's conference in December.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to have a flight plan if
Right.
I'm going to leave Chicago and come to Miami. Well, I argue that a personal mission statement is a flight plan.
Right.
So now when you start hooking up with people,
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what's your personal mission statement.
Right.
Because we can do anything, but we can't do everything. Right. So now I know that if I'm going to Miami and you going to California based on flight plans, I know we're not going in the same direction.
Right, right.
So that's why it's great when I have the staff do it, or have leaders do it, because all of a sudden you start to see where people are really passionate about their ministry, their calling. And so now you can start putting people in the right seats, as Jim Collins says, from good to great, get them on the right bus, in the right seats, going in the right direction.
Right, right. How well does this work in marriage?
What's that?
How does it help marriages, the Enneagram?
Oh man, it's probably outside of team building, mm-hmm. marriage and relationships, it just works phenomenal because now you start to understand your spouse, right. and you take it personal.
Yeah.
Now, who actually loves this are my young adults. Every time I teach this to the young adults, they love it because they're dating.
Right, 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 right.
So for couples, this is a must.
Yeah.
Because now you start to understand, because what we tend to do is we tend to take everything personal.
Yeah, that's true.
We take it all personal, and we believe that just because we think everybody should think and believe the same way we do.
Right, right. One more question, Dr. Griff. What are some ways the Enneagram can lead to internal healing?
Well, I think one of the things when you learn about yourself, mm-hmm. when you find my whole book is called Building a Better You, using Enneagram to find purpose, healing, and success in relationships. Mm-hmm. I think that once you find your purpose and you're at peace with that, right. that brings a level of healing right. that helps you become successful in relationships. Right. Because it's interesting, when I realized how about my personality and how I lead mm-hmm. and how I operate, once I found that out, that gave me a sense of peace. Because now I realize that what the Bible says is looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. So everybody has a lane. Yeah. And I find that God's given us purpose. He said, I know the thoughts and plans I have for you. So gave you a purpose and all that. But here's the thing. As long as I keep my eyes on the prize and stay in my lane, I'm gonna get the prize.
Right, right.
The problem is when I start looking in other people's lanes.
Yeah.
That's when I trip and fall.
Yeah.
I start comparing myself. Oh my God, your ministry is bigger than mine, or this or that. So I had to learn, when I started understanding the Enneagram myself, it helped me to be at peace with this.
Right.
It helped me to be at peace even with my church.
Right.
You know, because I started, I wanted Oakdale to grow to, you know, I wanted to be, you know, let's be this mega church and all that. And then I realized that cancer grows.
Yeah, right.
So then I was like, okay, I don't want us to grow. I want us to be, I don't want us to be cancerous. I want us to be healthy.
Yeah.
And healthy is relative. You could be healthy today and unhealthy tomorrow. But the Enneagram gave me tools to help me be a healthy leader.
Right.
So that way the healing could come. Then it helped me to understand, sometimes, you know, we work at churches and we have people who are very, very difficult. Right. And I used to take it personal. I thought, well, Deacon so-and-so said that. Why would he say that to me? Why? He a demon. Right. And then when I understood the Enneagram, it's nothing personal against me.
Yeah, yeah.
Then when I thought about the Enneagram, I'm like, okay, he mean to everybody.
Right.
He's equal opportunity, you know. He's a cave person. And I use a chapter in my book on the Enneagram called Cave People, which are Christians against virtually everything.
Wow.
And so we have those people there. But I found that I could find healing and not take it personal through the Enneagram.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Dr. Griff. Of course, we can spend 7 more days talking about the Enneagram, what it exposes about us and the people around us. And I want to kind of shift because I know time is of value. There's a quote that says, some of the main components of building a better you is understanding who we really are, the value we bring to society, and healing from any traumatic experience that left us emotionally scarred. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the Enneagram, I'm not, I said, it's back to you. It's back to you getting the tools to begin to heal.
Right.
And then, because what happens is when we're broken, we go around and break people.
Right.
When we're hurting, we go around and hurt people. So, and we see that in the church. When you have wounded leaders, they wound people. When you have hurting people, they hurt people. And so if people are not healed and have their wounds dealt with and all that, it tends to spill over and impact the congregation.
Right.
So that's why I think that you have to, for example, when people come to Oakdale, I don't have them jump into leadership. Sit. Even the ministers, sit. And some have sat for a year, 2 years, just sit. Because you need to be healed.
Right.
You need to get fed. You need to get healed. And many people are not doing it. So they're wounding. So you have these wounded leaders going everywhere.
Right.
Is that making sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So that's why I really think that the Enneagram plays that role in bringing about, giving you tools for healing.
Healing. Right. All right, Dr. Griff, as we transition now, I ask all my guests this. You've authored two amazing books. Tell me one of your favorite books that has impacted your life in an amazing way.
Which what you mean? Any book or the books I've written?
No, any book.
Oh, any book, yeah. What's the book? It's called Start with Why. I think
is that Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That book, man. that's an amazing book that I still go back to reading. I love Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Wow.
That's a great book to help us look at ourselves. And then I finished up David Blight's book on Frederick Douglass.
Wow.
And I was just amazed at how the similarities of the, late 1800s, mid to late 1800s are similar to the times now.
Wow.
Some of the same things that we're dealing with,
Right.
Frederick Douglass has dealt with as well. And so gives me a snapshot of the sort of the divisiveness that was going on in Congress at the time, the bitterness. People were in camps related to slavery and what to do with Black people, and at that time, and creating laws to manage the lives of Black people,
Right.
and to see that.
Right.
It's
Wow.
like, wow, we're doing that again today.
Okay, and the name of that book is?
It's called Frederick Douglass. I think
Oh.
it's Life of Frederick. Hold on, yeah, it's Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
It's David Blight, his book.
David Blight. Okay. I definitely got to jump on that resource.
Yeah, it's a really good, trying to think of if I have it. What did I do with it? Yeah, it's just called Frederick Douglass by David Blight.
Okay. Okay. Once again, thank you, Dr. Griff, for consenting to come and exposing us to the Enneagram. How can we get in contact with you, your information? How can we do the Enneagram test? Like how can we get that information?
Yes, so you can get, my website is ddarrellgriffin.com. So you can just go on there and you can connect with me there. You can purchase the book there. I do teach the Enneagram for churches and not-for-profits and corporations and schools.
Right.
So they can contact me there. I'd be glad to come and teach the Enneagram. Or if you have any coaching inquiries,
right,
want to hire a coach in any way, shape, or form, I know how to do that as well.
Okay. And so next time you come on, Dr. Griff, I have my number so you can do an assessment.
So they can see it. Do that. So they can see how you do it. And if, you could do it with your wife or whatever, family or staff, and we could do it on there so that people get a real feel for how a reading is actually done.
Right, right. Once again, thank you, Dr. Griff, for being on the Monday After Preachers podcast. This has been a great show. Thank you so very much.
Yes, blessings to you.